Megavanen, and welcome my friends to Elven Awakenings, chatting with the Elven Scholar. And now, to your guide to all things Elvish, Dr. Earendil Spindelellis, the Elven Scholar.
Once upon a time in a forest rich in pine and oak lived a young elf. He lived amongst his neighbors who were clothed in fur and feather, and found joy and peace with each sunrise, and silence in the evening light of the stars. He spent his days communing with his woodland brothers and sisters, and the nights in contemplation and meditation. Light shone upon him unstained from the mortal world, and he was happy. But as time passed, he became more aware of the land outside, filled with fear and despair, and he knew his time of living in the gentle woods was coming to an end, and his journey as a teacher was upon him. When the morning sun found him again, he walked out of the forest with nothing but the clothes on his back, and strode into the land of man, to teach and to be taught. For it is the way of all teachers, that the student so often will be the better master. This is my story, and it is true. My name is Earendil, and I am the Elven Scholar.
Sam. Wood elves. They're going to the harbour beyond the White Towers. To the Grey Havens. They're leaving Middle-earth, never to return. I don't know why. It makes me sad.
Megavanen, my elven fae and other kin family, and today is a very special edition. This was based on a YouTube show that I did quite some months back in celebration of World Singing Day, which was October 16th of last year. And it's about the world coming together and in song and in music, and I'd like to redo that for the radio show today because it is so important that we understand not only that elves have a very strong affinity for music and song, but why do we have such a love of singing? Why the love of song? And how singing and music is actually from the beginning of the universe is ingrained in our very genetic structure. This is a really fascinating subject, and it shows how truly magical and important it is to us and why it has become so important from the very early ages of the elves of this world. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about our love of music, our love of song, and why it's so important to us, and that I'm going to show you how it's actually from a medical, biological reason for this, why this is true. I'll be talking about some of the most recent discoveries about music and that how it actually exists within our genes themselves. And you're going to get to listen to the music that we make as living beings. So I hope you enjoy it and stay tuned. To begin this journey, we're going to go ahead and work from myth and magic all the way to science. And so let's go ahead and start with the mythological, and I'm going to read to you an excerpt from the Silmarillion by J.R. Tolkien, where he talks about the creation of the universe and how it was done in song. This is from the Aynor Lindale. The music of the Aynor. There was Eru the One, who in Arda is called Iluvatar, and he made first the Aynor, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before all else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. But for a long while they sang only each alone, or but few together, while the rest hearkened, for each comprehended only that part of the mind of Iluvatar from which he came. and in that understanding of their brethren they grew but slowly. Yet ever as they listened, they came to a deeper understanding, and increased in unison and harmony. And it came to pass that Iluvatar called together all the Aynor, and declared to them a mighty theme, unfolding to them things greater and more wonderful than he had yet revealed. And the glory of its beginning and the splendor of its end amazed the Aynor, so that they bowed before Iluvatar and were silent. Then Iluvatar said to them, "Of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music. And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices, if he will. But I will sit and hearken, and be glad that through you great beauty has been awakened into song." Then the voices of the Aynor, like unto harps, and lutes, and pipes, and trumpets, and viols, and organs, and like unto countless choirs singing with words, began to fashion the theme of Iluvatar to a great music. And a sound arose of endless interchanging melodies, woven in harmony that passed beyond hearing into the depths and into the heights. And the places of dwelling of Iluvatar were filled to overflowing, and the music and the echo of that music went out into the void, and it was not void. Never since have the Aynor made any music like to this music, though it has been said that a greater one still shall be made before Iluvatar by the choirs of the Aynor and the children of Iluvatar after the end of days. Then the themes of Iluvatar shall be played aright, and take being in the moment of their utterance. For all shall then understand fully his intent and their part, and each shall know the comprehension of each, and Iluvatar shall give to their thoughts the secret fire, being well pleased. All right. Elves and music. Why do elves have such a strong affinity to music? It's because we have known from the very beginning the magic that literally exists within music. I, for myself, I've always had a deep and abiding love for music. There are multiple instruments that I love to play. And especially when you learn, and this is where this show is going to get into it, is that we are actually made from music. Whether you accept the creation story of Tolkien, or you look into some of the other more ancient mythology within this world, music seems to have had or played a great part in the original creation. So we are all actually made from music. We are literally notes in the great music of the spheres. We are notes in a great and long-standing song. Well, creation of music. All right, the whole universe being created with music. Well, it's kind of interesting. We'll take a little scientific jaunt here. It was actually proven that there truly is a great echo. Tolkien had said that in the original creation of the universe, as you just heard from Aynor Lindali, that the universe was created from music, from a song. All right, and Tolkien had made a comment one time, and he said that the echo of that music can most be heard in water. All right, so remember that, if you would. In water, that it could most be heard still to this day. And from Elven mythology, it's one of the reasons why we're so drawn to the ocean, so drawn to the sea, and sometime I'll talk about that as well. All right, well, look at here. There was actually scientific evidence of what Tolkien said, if you want to interpret it this way. All right. It was finally proven that there actually is a great echo of the music. And this came about back in I think it was the 1960s, that the Bell engineers, Bell Labs, the telephone folks, the Bell engineers they were tasked to find out what was all this static. Because back then when you were on your telephone, very, very often, there was a lot of static in the background. And they could not get rid of it. They couldn't figure out where the static was from. And of course, it was affecting the quality of the phone calls. So they tasked these two engineers to go find out where this noise was and please fix it. Okay, so they began their research and they began to notice that, wait a minute, this does not seem to have a terrestrial source. In other words, it doesn't seem to be coming from anywhere on Earth. And when they tilted their antennas and such upwards, that's where the noise was coming from. They realized that the sound, whatever that was affecting the phone lines, was coming from space. So they actually got together with some other scientists, and they researched it, and they found out that, lo and behold, the noise was, at least in theory, was from the original Big Bang, when the universe was created. It was the noise that they were hearing on the phone lines was the echo of that original Big Bang that occurred billions and billions of years ago. And what is fascinating, what seems to indicate that Tolkien at least was inspired somewhere along the line here, in truth, is that they found out that the noise, and this is all science, but it was found to be in something called the hydrogen cycle. It's from the hydrogen atoms that were originally created in the Big Bang, and that's still the vibrational noise or sound that comes from it. Hydrogen, well, that's what water's made from, H2O. And so the Big Bang, the echo of it is in hydrogen, and what contains the hydrogen is water. So the original echo of the Big Bang, the original echo of the original music, is found exactly where Tolkien said it would be. So it shows that water does truly hold the original music. All right, so we're going to go ahead and continue into with the mysteries here and shedding some light on one of the greatest mysteries of life, the power and influence of water. Why, how and why does it attract us? Why does it affect us so much? And it's capable literally of soothing the savage beast and yet also inspiring armies. We're going to get into some of the history of it before I get into the really cool science. And this is going to be a lot of fun. You'll actually get to listen to what you sound like on a genetic level. But I think another interesting fact to mention also, and this is so incredible, and this is the way life is. Life is actually incredibly simple. It's ourselves who complicate it. All the music that you have ever heard throughout all of Earth's history, or probably ever will hear, came from just 12 musical notes. Ignoring the octaves, the highs or lows, but all music, at least in Western style, throughout all of Earth's history, comes from only 12 notes. The great symphonies and orchestras down to heavy metal, it all comes from 12 notes. So think of all the thousands of songs you've ever heard and the millions you've never heard. Each one of them can be made from just 12 notes. So in simplicity, what is music? Well, music is made up of notes. A note is the pitch or duration of a musical sound. The pitch is how high or low a note sounds and is dependent on the frequency of the vibrations of the sound waves that the sound creates. Okay, so remember that. It is vibrations that make up the whole universe, and this was found through quantum science and through relativity. It is vibrations that make up the whole universe, and has been found to be the only difference between matter and energy. It's simply its vibrational state. But everything in this universe vibrates just like a note, just like you. So let's talk about a little bit of the history of music, and then we'll get to the really cool stuff. All right, the ancient Greeks, for example, certainly thought that music had some magical power to it, so much so that they put one god, Apollo, in charge of both healing and music. See, that's kind of interesting. They recognized that music can be very healing. So who was in charge of healing and music was Apollo. He was in charge of both. And recent medical studies seem to be providing or confirming to us the proof of what the Greeks thought. For example, music seems to slow the heart rate, lower blood pressure, and reduce levels of stress hormones. It can also provide some relief during heart attack and stroke issues with victims and patients undergoing surgery itself. How does music exert these benefits? Some research suggests that music may promote the brain's ability to make new connections between nerve cells, actually quite similar to mathematics. It's interesting that they did some studies and they found out math and music both cause the brain to rewire itself in very similar ways and to produce more connections than if you didn't study mathematics or if you didn't study music. All right, another idea is that it works its magic through its rhythms. Humans are rhythmic beings. Our heartbeat, breathing, and brain waves are all rhythmic. The human brain and nervous system are hardwired, literally to distinguish music from noise and to respond to rhythm and repetition, tones, and tunes. One study enrolled 60 patients hospitalized for major strokes. All received standard stroke care. In addition, 1/3 of the patients listened to recorded music at least 1 hour a day. Another third listened to audiobooks. And the final group did not receive any auditory stimulation. After 3 months, verbal memory was improved by 60% in the music listeners, compared with 20 to 30% in the audio group and to the patients who didn't receive any type of auditory stimulation. So again, music, even in stroke victims where part of the brain is damaged, it does indeed produce new connections and basically new wiring. All right. In addition, the music listener's ability to perform and control certain mental operations improved by 17%. The patients in the other two groups did not improve at all in this area, so the music had something to do with it. Music therapy also was used to help patients with balance and coordination. There was a program designed to train older adults to walk and perform various movements in time to music, helped improve their gait and balance when compared with their peers who didn't receive that type of therapy. There was a friend who was who had severe Parkinson's disease, was introduced to a friend who was a singing teacher. Okay, remember Parkinson's disease. The thought was that singing might help him cope with his disease. All right, this individual very often, and it is a symptom, I've treated patients for this before, they would find themselves locked. They literally could not move their muscles. They were unable to walk or use their arms much. This would happen with this particular Parkinson's patient. They found out that when he would burst out singing just a few notes of an aria, opera or something of that nature, just by singing a few notes, unlocked his legs. They literally became unlocked just by doing something as simple as just singing a few notes. Nikola Tesla, very famous engineer, scientist, inventor, he described having discovered about the vibrational state of human beings. And he talked about this discovery and his invention that he created, and he considered this particular invention that he made was his greatest contribution to human beings. And that's a pretty bold statement from somebody with the level of Nikola Tesla. So he created this machine that he called the oscillation machine, and it affected the vibrational state of individuals and things in the area. And he found that, and anyway, this is according to him, and not sure if it's true, but again, we are all vibrational. He used it for years and years to treat people with a wide variety of health problems, from constipation to cardiovascular disease, injuries, infections, sleep disorders, and hormonal imbalances. Okay, Tesla himself said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, vibrations, and frequency. And of course, what do scientists today have discovered themselves? That indeed, the universe is a huge soup of vibration. Again, the only difference between matter and energy is the vibrational state. We are all simply vibrational notes. Okay, as I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, the universe was literally created, supposedly, with the Big Bang in this one big note that went out into the universe that you can actually hear to this day. All right, and again, it is a common theme in so many scientific studies, that the universe was created this way, and that the background noise is still there, and that they all agree more and more. Einstein agreed, Tesla agreed, and so many other scientists agreed that the universe is vibrational in its nature. And the real universe is really just a lot of energy in different vibrational states. So it's no wonder that music can have an effect, all right, because if we're vibrational states and music is, it's no strange leap of faith to understand how music can affect the human body in healing. Pythagoras. All right, let's go back into human history one more time, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Elvish history. Well, Pythagoras, a wonderful ancient Greek and philosopher and mathematician, believed that music could be divided, and this is really cool, could be divided into three basic types of music. All right, and for example, he called one of them musical instrumentalist, which is the music made by playing instruments. And this one is great, musica humana. And this is important. It's the unheard, continuous music made by each human organism, and especially the resonance between, for him, he said, between the soul and the body. And again, I'm going to have some wonderful audio clips here to play for you in just a few that proves that this man who lived thousands of years ago, and yet he was right, that there is indeed music within our bodies, and that he knew that. Okay, and so then he went on to talk about the other form of music, because again, there were three forms. There was musica instrumentalist, musica humana, and then finally, musica mundana, which is the music made by the cosmos, which was later known as the music of the spheres. And golly gee whiz, he was right there too. NASA has proven that one as well, that the spheres, the planets, and the stars do indeed make music. And so the universe we live in is literally made from, and continues to be made from, music. And I'll play you some of that here in just a few minutes too. So we live our lives within a true symphony. And the elves of old knew this and incorporated it into their lives. So before we go on with the audio clips and the science, let's one more time go back into Elvish mythology. We're going to take a little break here and talk about some stories from Tolkien that emphasized over and over again the strength and magic of music and how it affected the course of history, so to speak, and their events. One of the most beautiful examples of the elven ability to use music and song to help control their environment and their world and history itself comes to us again from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion. And it involved Luthien Tinuviel, considered the most beautiful elven lady ever created, ever born, and brought into this world. If you've never read anything else from the Silmarillion, if you've never even read Lord of the Rings, I highly recommend that you at least read the story of Beren and Luthien Tinuviel. It's, to me, probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, love story that there ever was told. And it's about an elven lady, Luthien, who falls in love with a mortal man, Beren. And of course that was considered quite taboo, and the fate that they brought amongst themselves by falling in love with each other, and it went on to change history and change the world, an incredible love story. And wrapped within this story is so much with a musical theme, and how much music was able to save them and to heal them, and to even, in the end, to bring them back to life. So I'm going to go ahead and read a few passages from the Silmarillion that dealt with her use of music and how she was able to accomplish some wonderful things, at least according to Tolkien. So here's a passage where both her and Beren are before Morgoth, who was considered, you might say, that he was the devil, that he was Satan, that he was Lucifer, and that Beren and Luthien were on a quest to regain at least one of the Silmarils, these wonderful magic jewels that the devil, Morgoth, had stolen. And it was embedded into the crown that he was wearing, and he was basically living within what you might call the depths of hell. And Beren and Luthien had to go down in there. It was their quest to go get back at least one of those jewels. And no one else had ever been able to do it. No one of the gods, so to speak, no other elf or human have ever been able to do this. And Luthien was able to accomplish it through music and love. So here's an excerpt of that according to J.R.R. Tolkien. She was not daunted by his eyes, and she named her own name and offered her service to sing before him after the manner of a minstrel. It is well known throughout a lot of history and myth and legend. To give one's own name is to give or offer the power to another over them. But she had no fear of him. Then Morgoth, looking upon her beauty, conceived in his thought an evil lust, and a desire more dark than any that had yet come into his heart since he fled from Valinor. Thus he was beguiled by his own malice, for he watched her, leaving her free for a while, and taking secret pleasure in his thought. Then suddenly she eluded his sight, and out of the shadows began a song of such surpassing loveliness, and of such blinding power, that he listened perforce, and a blindness came upon him, as his eyes roamed to and fro, seeking her. All his court was cast down in slumber, and all the fires faded and were quenched, but the Silmarils and the crown on Morgoth's head blazed forth suddenly with a radiance of white flame, and the burden of that crown and of the jewels bowed his head, as though the world were set upon it, laden with a weight of care, of fear, and of desire that even the will of Morgoth could not support. Then Luthien, catching up her winged robe, sprang into the air, and her voice came dropping down like rain into pools, profound and dark. She cast her cloak before his eyes and set upon him a dream, dark as the outer void where once he walked alone. And another example of the strength of the magic of music in the Silmarillion was where Luthien was trying to rescue Beren from Sauron, who was a fallen angel, and he was trapped inside of a tower. And it goes, "In that hour Luthien came, and standing upon the bridge that led to Sauron's isle, she sang a song that no walls of stone could hinder. Beren heard, and he thought that he dreamed, for the stars shone above him, and in the trees nightingales were singing. And in answer he sang a song of challenge that he had made in praise of the 7 stars, the sickle of the Valar that Varda hung above the north, as a sign for the fall of Morgoth. Then all strength left him, and he fell down into darkness." And one last example of the beauty and majesty and magic of music that Tolkien bequeathed to us in the Silmarillion. And in this part of the tale, Beren, who was mortal, had died from a horrendous poisoned wound, and Luthien begged him to please, before he left the walls of the earth, to wait in the halls of Mandos where the dead are called, and to wait for him. Now, being Elven, she did not have to die, but she cared. Her love was so great for Beren that she gave up her spirit and met him again in the halls of Mandos. Now, in Mandos, it is ruled by the Vala Irmo. He is the Vala of the dead. He calls them to the halls where they wait for whatever is their journey, be they mortal or elven. And in no time had it ever been that Mandos could be persuaded from his judgments. But this time Luthien stood before him to beg for one last time for her and Beren to be together again. And she did it in song. And it goes, "But Luthien came to the halls of Mandos, where are the appointed places of the Eldelier, beyond the mansions of the west upon the confines of the world. There those that wait sit in the shadow of their thought. But her beauty was more than their beauty, and her sorrow deeper than their sorrows. And she knelt before Mandos and sang to him. The song of Luthien before Mandos was the song most fair that ever in the words were woven, and the song most sorrowful that ever the world shall ever hear. Unchanged, imperishable, it is sung still in Valinor, beyond the hearing of the world, and the listening the Valar grieved. For Luthien wove two themes of words, of the sorrow of the Eldar and the grief of men, of the two kindreds that were made by Ilúvatar to dwell in Arda, the kingdom of earth, amid the innumerable stars. And as she knelt before him, her tears fell upon his feet like rain upon stones, and Mandos was moved to pity, who never before was so moved, nor has been since. Mandos, he actually granted them something that had never been done before, had never happened, and that was the chance to come back and live their lives yet again, and to be together and to have another chance at a joyful life. It's an amazing story, and it's one of those about the perception of how Tolkien felt about music. It's well known that Tolkien had a great love for music, and he was highly moved by it, and it was a very strong part of his life. So as elves, we know the music and our love for music, because we know that it is inherently a part of the universe itself. It's how the universe was created, and we know that it has amazing healing abilities, which of course are being proven to this day. So let's go ahead and get to some really cool soundtracks here, and I'd love to play for you a few tracks that were made by NASA, because again, Pythagoras talked about the Musica Mundana, and that was the music of the spheres. All right, so we're going to play a little bit of music from NASA, and we're also going to play some actual human DNA music that was discovered by genetic scientists. And these aren't boring. These are actually amazing to listen to. It's absolutely beautiful. These are not just like, screeching notes or white noise in the background. This is actual music made by the spheres. It's actual music made by you. All right? And it's amazing because it proves that indeed the elves were right, that we are all made from music. That music, it's the foundation of magic. It's the foundation of the universe, and it does heal, and that it exists within each one of us. So I'm going to go ahead right now and take a few minutes out, and I'm going to describe to you each piece that I'm getting ready to play, because I want to make sure, because you're welcome. If you can get more information if you'd like, you can go to my YouTube channel, Elven Scholar, and within there you can listen to this particular episode I did back in October about the We Are All Notes of Music, and it has a lot more information on it because it is a video. But as this is radio, I'm going to kind of try to describe to you a little bit about what you're about to hear when I'm getting ready to play. And I think that maybe you'll be as moved as I have. And the first piece I'd like to play, and this again takes us all the way back to the ancient Greeks, who talked about the music of the spheres. They actually mentioned this, and they thought that there was music that came from the planets and the stars, and they were right. So I'll play a few clips here, and I'll describe to you as it's going what's happening. All right? Although space is a virtual vacuum, this does not mean there is no sound in space. Sound does exist as electromagnetic vibrations. Through specially designed instruments, the NASA Voyager, amongst the other space probes, used plasma wave antenna to record the vibrations, all within the range of human hearing. The recorded sounds are the complex interactions of charged particles from the solar wind in interacting with the planet's vibrations. So there's a number of planets that NASA recorded. So remember, these are actual sound vibrations coming from them that NASA was able to record. So what you're hearing now is Jupiter. This was the actual sound waves captured from Neptune. Absolutely stunning. These are real from NASA. And here we are actually listening to sound coming from the rings of Uranus. And here is the beautiful sound from the planet Saturn. And this glorious little tone is the music or sound coming from Saturn's rings. And this is part of the song of Earth herself. And one more time, the voice of our Mother Earth. There is indeed a choir that comes to us from the heavens, and when you go out on a starry night, some quiet night, remember that when you look up into the heavens, you are looking up into a symphony, an orchestra of music that comes to us and surrounds us each and every day of our lives. And if we would just listen. Okay, I'd like to go on now to what you are what you truly are. You are a note in the grand orchestra of life itself. And we're going to actually play some sounds of you, of what a human being and what you sound like and what we are on a genetic level. All right, and you might be amazed at some of the sounds that we play. Well, a little background first on how this was all discovered about our individual music. And we need to go back to Dr. Susama Uno. He was a geneticist with the Beckman Institute at the City of Hope Hospital in California. So this was not just some New Age philosopher. This was an actual geneticist. And what he discovered was that every molecule within us, every protein, every chemical that's within our body actually vibrates and has its own frequency. This is pretty cool stuff. And he actually developed, I guess you would say, he composed by taking all these vibrations and translating them over into Western style music. Because remember, there are only 12 notes that exist, and he was able to take these vibrational notes and basically superimpose them onto regular audio sound so that we would actually be able to hear it, and was able to play back those vibrations, and they sounded again and he went on to produce about 15 compositions from different life forms. Then they actually had music. It wasn't just a bunch of random notes. It was actually music. And it's not like he tried to produce music. He just basically moved it over. Well, this did not go unnoticed. And other scientists began to look at his work, and they started doing their own research, and they found out that indeed it was true. Everything in life has its own particular vibration and frequency. And now they've been able to actually develop equipment that can actually see the actual, using this imaging equipment, that they can actually see our individual proteins vibrating. Actually can see them vibrating. And they found that through this and these discoveries, they found that our DNA, actually, this is really interesting, our DNA requires this sound, these vibrations, in order to replicate. In order for us to live, we actually have to have music. We have to have sound. And it's absolutely incredible. And so I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit of this for you so that you can hear it. So again, how profound. We would not exist if it weren't for sound, if it weren't for music, for vibrations. Our DNA can't even replicate without music. What an astonishing discovery. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play for you now a clip of a scientist who was at a special medical conference. And he was one of those that had successfully translated some of the DNA music. And they played at this conference. His name was Dr. David Deemer, professor of chemistry at UC Santa Cruz. And this was at the Wonderfest 2007 conference. And he was one of the scientists who had worked on translating the vibrational captures that they'd done from different molecules and different organisms and translated to their corresponding musical notes. In this case, they worked with the DNA sequence from the molecule from the part of the pancreas that produces your insulin. So your pancreas actually makes music, and these are the actual notes that he played during the lecture. And it's absolutely beautiful, and to realize this is what you're doing, and this is why elves love music, and how we know that that's what we are made from. So you're going to be hearing two molecules repeating one after the other from insulin, because they kind of have two molecular chains, and you're going to hear both of the chains. So get ready. It's absolutely stunning.
And you're going to hear two melodies repeating one after the other. Insulin has two chains, and you're going to hear both of the chains. So let's listen. That's one insulin molecule. The ribosomes in your pancreases and the islets of Langerhans that make insulin are making thousands of those per second.
Absolutely amazing. So I hope this shows you a little bit about why elves love music, why music is such an integral part of our being. It's not just that we simply love music because we know that, but also because we know that it can heal, and because it is so much a part of the fabric of the universe, but also because we are music. We are all notes and chords of the great symphony of life. And as I've said before, elves have known since the beginning the magic of music, elven love for music, and we are merely notes in a greater song. So cherish that special note that you have. There is no other note in the universe like you. There are now companies out there that will take your DNA swab and will record and compose the music of your DNA. And one of the beauties that we see coming out of these companies is that no one song is the same. Everyone has a unique music, a unique song that is you, that is only you, and no one else in the universe has your particular song. So you are special. You are a note, you are a chord, and you are a song and the great song of life. Cherish that and recognize the divinity that is in you, the sacredness and rarity that is you. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I appreciate you listening to it. I'm going to take a small break right now, and when we get back, we're going to go over some of our announcements, and then we've got story time coming up. We'll be right back. This is Elven Awakenings, chatting with the Elven Scholar on Heroes and Mortal Radio. We'll be right back. When you go to college, you expect the high halls and libraries filled with old books. But much has changed, and in today's world, online schools have exploded in popularity. Please join us at Lembinglemore, the world's first online college with a nod towards elven and humankind alike. With Lembinglemore, you can start a new career or a new life in the holistic health field. Learn a new elven language, study history and culture or the environment. We believe everyone deserves an affordable education with personalized attention. We provide full certifications in the following fields: home herbalist, Reiki levels 1 through Reiki master, nutritionist, first aid, Elven history and culture, Elven languages, Quenya and Sindarin, anatomy, botany, introduction to archaeology, ecology, astronomy, and Elven laws of manifestation and meditation. We also offer full diplomas in the fields of medical herbalist and medical nutritionist. More classes are being added. Many students have already found new careers in these fields. You can pay for your classes outright or join a low-cost monthly subscription which allows you to take as many classes as you like at one time while you maintain the subscription. This college was founded to give you a chance to expand your horizons while believing in who you are. All classes are certified and are aimed at helping you start a new life and a new career. Adult study programs for both elves and humans alike, designed specifically for you. You can find us at www.elvenscholar.org. Discover what is inside of you. Be who you are at Lembinglemore, the Elven School of Lore Masters. Okay, we're back, and I just wanted to go ahead and give a couple of announcements here real quick before we go on to story time. Next week's show is going to be a fun show. It's about elves and karma, the elven perspective of karma. I know a lot of people I've spoken to, and this is what kind of inspired the show coming up, is I've heard them say, well, my karma doesn't matter anymore. All right, well, from the elven perspective, I wanted to go ahead and talk about that particular subject, about what exactly is karma, how does it affect elves, fae, and other kin, and just everyone in general, and what maybe are the facts behind it, and if karma does exist, what can we do to finally get past it? And does it really matter whether karma is good or bad? Just it's the lessons we go through within our life. So next week it is about elves and karma and what we can do about it. The show after that is going to be, and that'll be for the February 13th. It is in recognition of Valentine's Day. And yes, it is going to be a very elven version of it. It is elven love, unconditional love, the hardest and easiest of all love there is, and how you can achieve to find and to experience unconditional love in your life. All right, so that will be a celebration for Valentine's Day. Upcoming shows after that, such as Living as an Elf in Today's World, I'll be talking about myself. How do I live in this world, a very non-elven world, and still maintain my elven identity? Also going to be talking about finding joy, elven joy in a very non-elven world. Other shows, the love of elves for stars and trees and the earth. Finding balance in a non-elven world, and a show coming up very soon. I would like to go ahead and do it with more of an open mic. This is going to be on elven diet. Going to be pretty controversial. A lot of people may not agree with it. But I would like for us to be able to have a mature debate about the elven diet. What is it, at least from my perspective? Okay, so those are going to be some of the upcoming shows here. Okay. So again, as a reminder, you will be able to listen to this show not only on Heroes and Mortals, but on the Elven Scholar YouTube channel and on the Odyssey video platform as a podcast. Okay, it is time for story time. This story, I'm going to go ahead and narrate it myself. This is a elven rendition of a very ancient story, and it's basically called the Four Elven lamps. These are 4 very magical lamps that are passed on to a very wealthy mortal merchant. And with it, though, as most things elven do, comes with a very, very special life lesson. So I hope you enjoy it. The story of the 4 Elven lamps. A man of immense wealth lived in a city. While he had more money than he could spend, he wanted yet more wealth. One day, a wandering elven sage came to his village seeking a place to stay for the night. The wealthy mortal, in an attempt to impress the elven scholar, invited him to stay at his mansion, which was in the greener part of the village. The sage agreed, and for that evening the mortal served him well. In the morning, the elven sage, pleased with the care he was given, offered the mortal a gift. He gave him 4 lamps of exquisite design, made by the finest elven smiths in a land far off and beyond the experience of the mortal. He told him, Should you find you are in need of money, light this first lamp and walk to the east. When its light fades and disappears, stop and dig at that spot. You will find the money you seek. After that, should you find a need for money, light the second lamp and face west in your journeys. When the light fades and goes out, stop on that spot and dig yet again. You will indeed find immense wealth. But even then, should your need not be fulfilled, light the third lamp and journey to the south. Once that light goes out, stop and search the ground, and you'll find your wealth again. In the end, you will be left with one lamp and one direction you could go. But I give you a fair warning. Do not light the last lamp and go in that direction. Giving this simple warning, the elven sage turned around and left the mortal's home and walked into the green of the forest. As soon as the sage had left his sight, the mortal man lit the first lamp and traveled to the east in search of easy wealth. His walk took him deep into the surrounding forest, and when his lamp extinguished, he began to dig. In a very short time, he uncovered a small iron pot filled with silver and gold coins and jewels. Seeing this, he became overjoyed and thought of the other lamps. So he journeyed back to his home and lit the second lamp and began a westward march. This time, he carried all of the other lamps with him. Eventually, it took him to a lonely place far from home. With the lamp finally darkened, he began to dig. Within moments, a glint of gold shone through the dirt and soon became a chest overflowing with gold coins. At the sight of the treasure, his greed grew all the more, so he lit the third lamp as well. He turned his attention to the south and walked till the lamp's light too faded and dimmed out of sight. He was standing at the base of a tree, and here he dug it again. Here he discovered a jade pot filled with pearls and diamonds. Even after finding such riches, the mortal man yet craved for more treasure and remembered the fourth and final lamp, the one which carried with it a dire warning from the elven sage to forego its use. But, blinded by his greed, his insatiable fear of lack, and of an unknown future, he lit the last lamp. In his greed, he thought, surely there must be vast riches indeed, and the elf did not want me to find them, but to keep it all for himself. He began his travel to the north in search of the great treasure he knew must be hidden from all but him. In time, the lamp too extinguished in a quiet and solitary place. He began to dig, and eventually uncovered a door in the earth. He was able to open the door with some effort, and discovered a set of stairs leading into the ground below. At the bottom of the steps, he entered a wondrous and beautiful palace filled with statues, artwork, and gold and silver ornaments. As he explored the palace, he found many rooms, each filled with treasures like before. With each room, his eyes grew more and more dazzled by what was surely his immense hoard of wealth. As he journeyed further into the palace, he soon could hear the sound of a stone grinding. He walked in that direction and soon found a room with a flour mill and an ancient man sitting at the stone, tending to his task of grinding wheat for his bread. Upon seeing the old man, the mortal asks, "Hey, who are you and how did you get here?" The old man replied through a weak and broken voice, "If you will but grant me a small rest and tend to this stone, I will be able to tell you my story." The thought that maybe the old man knew more about where there was more money, so he consented to give him a break and sat and began to tend the stone. At that point, the old man began to laugh loudly and dancing around the room. "Why are you laughing?" shouted the mortal. He began to stop tending the wheel and to stand up. The old man told him, "Do not stop the wheel or stand from that place. This palace and all that it contains are yours forever. Should you stand, though, and leave that spot, you will surely die, as the millstone is all that keeps the palace from crashing about you. I too was caught here by lighting the last lamp in my own greed and insatiable search for unending wealth, and was ensnared as you by the one before me. I have spent my entire youth trapped here for hundreds of your years, and now I have found my freedom." As the old man began to turn around and prepared to leave the room, the mortal shouted at him, "How can I leave this room and find my freedom?" The old man smiled and stated, "You must wait until the time comes when another, surely as greedy as you, finds their way here with their fourth lamp." From that day forward, the mortal cursed himself for his greed and waited for yet another to one day replace him at the stone. So often in our lives we will let go of the precious things we have in search of better ones because of our greed. It seems to be a part of human nature that they want more and more and better, but sometimes we deprive ourselves of what we already have. These could have been the things or people in our lives that would have given us the joy and satisfaction we truly needed. Greed can indeed be a bottomless pit, one with no bottom as we seek for what we do not need. This does not mean that we cannot search for more in our lives, but make sure that you do not lose the precious ones that you already have. It's time for final thoughts, and the main reason I do these radio shows, the reason I do the YouTube channel, Elven Scholar, is to educate, is to not only teach you, but to teach me so that we may learn from each other, so that we can gain the knowledge and the wisdom that we need to remember who we are. That this life is all about remembering that divine elven or fey or otherkin light that you are, and how better to express that than in music. So education is important, and I'd like to think that we do it in such a way that you don't feel like you're being educated. But for my final thoughts, I wanted to talk about somebody who never declared himself as fey or elven or otherkin, and yet is a beautiful example of someone who knew as a young child that the only way he was going to find the freedom to be himself was through educating himself, through learning about life, learning about himself, learning about the world. And against all odds, he gained the education he needed, and he gained the freedom we needed. And I'm not trying to compare our struggle with his. His was much greater, and I'm going to go ahead and play a wonderful audio clip about him here in just a moment. But it's an example of, you want your freedom, you want to be who you are, you want to have the freedom to express who you are, then take the time to learn about yourself and to learn about the world around you and to try to remember who you truly are. Well, this audio clip is donated by a wonderful YouTube channel that I love to use quite a bit, and that's Dare to Do Motivation. Wonderful YouTube channel full of motivating and beautiful stories and parables. And this story is about a wonderful man back in the 1800s, Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was born, they figure, in February either 1817 or 1818, and he passed away on February 20th, 1895. He was an African-American social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman. Originally a slave, he escaped in Maryland, and afterwards he became a national leader of the abolitionist movement in Massachusetts and New York. The man was famous for his speeches and for the inspiration and passion that he could instill in others. So this is a beautiful little story, again, by Dare to Do Motivation. And it's hopefully an inspiration that teaches us that we can overcome anything, no matter what we might call ourselves, and to be able to dare to find that freedom we need through internal drive and passion to educate ourselves about ourselves and the world around us. So I hope you enjoy it, and then I'll be right back after that.
This is a story about a boy whose mother is a slave. He is separated from her when he is only a few weeks old. After that, his grandmother takes care of him. When he is 6, his grandmother takes him to the plantation to work and leaves him there intentionally. He never recovers from this betrayal of abandonment. Later on, he's sent to work for a ship carpenter by his master. Despite a ban on teaching slaves, the carpenter's wife starts teaching him the English alphabet. But soon, her husband finds out and forces her to stop teaching him. Determined to read and write, he continues to learn from neighborhood white boys by giving away his food in exchange for lessons. As his knowledge and vocabulary grow, he begins to read newspapers and political books. The more he reads, the more aware he becomes of the social injustice against him. One day he buys a copy of the Colombian Orator, a popular school book, which helps him to understand the power of spoken and written words. He learns that educating his people is the key to fight against social injustice. So he starts holding church services to teach other slaves how to read and write. His weekly services grow in popularity, with over 40 slaves attending, but soon angry slave owners shut down his class. He gets sold to a new master. His new master is a monster in form of a human being. He enjoys whipping his slaves who won't follow orders. Our hero endures this brutal whipping for about 6 months, until he can't take it anymore, and one day he fights back. The fight between him and the brutal master lasts for 2 hours, and eventually the master surrenders. On that day, he restores his sense of self-worth, and he vows to never let anyone beat him again. At the age of 20, after 2 unsuccessful attempts, he finally escapes from slavery by impersonating a sailor and flees to the north. To continue fighting against injustice, against his people, he decides to spread his knowledge and wisdom. Whenever and wherever he can, he attends abolitionist meetings. In 1841, after attending an abolitionist convention, he takes the opportunity to become a lecturer for the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. This leads him to public speaking and writing. Soon, he starts writing and publishing books on slavery and founds an anti-slavery newspaper titled The North Star. A lot of white people aren't happy and don't want to let him do these things, and one day, while participating in a lecturing tour, he's chased and beaten by an angry mob before being rescued by a local family. But he's determined to continue fighting his fight against injustice. In addition to abolition, he also participates in the first Women's Rights Convention. Soon Frederick Douglass is recognized internationally as a human rights leader fighting against the slavery system and standing in for women's rights. He goes on to become a trusted advisor of President Lincoln. He advises the president on the treatment of black soldiers and urges him to give all black men and women the right to vote. In 1863, President Lincoln declares the freedom of all slaves. Douglass becomes the first African American citizen to hold a high U.S. government rank. He is also the first black person to receive a vice presidential nomination, although he did not campaign for the office. He keeps on inspiring people to use the power of education to effect positive change in themselves and society. His words will inspire future presidents and inspire those who will fight for justice after him. Frederick's journey teaches us to never give up in the face of adversity. Frederick Douglass once famously said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crop without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roars of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both, moral and physical, but it must be a struggle.
I know that we really cannot compare our journey with what he went through, the trials and tribulations, but what he does do for us is to give us an inspiration to continue on, that as terrible as we might think what we are experiencing in today's world, if people like Frederick Douglass, with what he went through, can overcome what they have endured, I think that we can make it too, that we can endure, and that we can learn, and that we can grow, and we can teach both ourselves and others how to remember who we are. This is an amazing journey we're on, and you, as this episode shows, there is no one else like you in all this universe. You truly are your own unique music, even right down to the genetic level. There is no one else in the universe that has your note. Let it ring out. Let it shine out. There are people who are waiting to hear and see your beautiful light. Before we close, I wanted to go ahead and read a wonderful poem that was donated to me about a week ago. I didn't get it in the last episode, so I'd like to go ahead and read it today. This is by a dear elven sister. I've spoken about her many times. She lives in Estonia, and her elven name is Eriana, which appropriately for her means gift from God. And she's writing about one of the beautiful spirits that helps heal this world, and her poem goes as such. Estée the gentle. Estée the gentle, healer of pain, is thy name. You heal all hurts and weariness with your powerful light. Your fountain pure refreshes the burdened to continue their quest. Estée the gentle, giver of rest. We can all use that, I think, once in a while on our journey, and then get right back up again and take another step. Thank you again, Ariana, for that. It was beautiful. We do appreciate it. Okay, well, as always, thank you for listening, my friends, and until we are together again next week, may you be blessed by the elves. My name is Dr. Erendios Spindalelis, and I am the Elven Scholar. Namari. Megavanen, and welcome to our YouTube channel, The Gentle Musings of an Elven Scholar. My name is Dr. Erendios Spindalelis, and I am the Elven Scholar. Join me on this journey exploring all things Elven. Learn about Elven culture, healing, diet, meditation, and Elven spirituality. Come and take this adventure with me, and together we can find that inner light and balance that exists within each one of us. Namari.